Welcome back to my Oklahoma Sooners Dynasty, and today we are getting into the season preview for season 11 of this series. But the first thing we're going to do is send you over to Madden 23 to see what all of our old players have been up to. Welcome to the Madden 23 part of this team preview video, where we figure out how all of last year's draft class did their rookie season and where all of these new guys are going to get drafted. We have a few players that I'm excited to see how they do this season. One of them was Dwight Rollins, but apparently he has a dislocated hip and will miss the first 6 weeks of the year. He was the #1 overall draft pick. But don't worry, because we still have fan favorite Chris McKinney to look forward to this season. He was the #2 draft pick. I really thought he was going to be the #1. He ended up going to Indianapolis, and then Jonathan Taylor got traded to Washington, so Chris McKinney will be the #1 back in Indy this year. And we had another top 5 pick in the last draft in defensive back Adam Jackson, who went #5 to Arizona, but apparently will start this season injured as well. A dislocated ankle will keep him out the first 2 weeks. Sadly, it does not appear we will get to see quarterback Sean Griffin this season in his rookie year in Pittsburgh, as they drafted him to back up RJ Cordani, an 8th-year player who's only an 86 overall. I don't really know why they took Griffin in the first round. Obviously, there are a few more players I'm excited to see how they do later in their careers here. Like Ty Downing already has a Super Bowl. He won one in his rookie year. Let's see if the Panthers can get back there this season. Well, it appears the Panthers have done pretty well. They end up with the best record in the league at 14-3. Here is the playoff picture for this season. Obviously, the Panthers end up as the 1 seed, but that's not the only team we're rooting for. We have players all over the league, so let's go check out some stats. Now, I always like to start with the first player we ever put in from this series. It's wide receiver Tim Scott, who is now in Washington. I believe this is his 3rd team. He gets 900 yards receiving this year and 8 total touchdowns. And now one of my favorite players from this series. This was the very first guy I ever recruited for our defense, middle linebacker Dallas Tremblay. He now plays in Detroit and comes off 106 tackles, 3.5 sacks, but got no interceptions this season. One of the first players I ever recruited to play in the secondary in this series, strong safety Kawika Moore in Green Bay. He is going to have 18 tackles this year, no sacks, and last year he got 3 interceptions, but this year he gets none. And now we get to move on to a trio of receivers that I have that I still absolutely love. Wide receiver Wayne Outlaw, who went to Chicago. This season gets 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns, both career highs, along with 99 receptions. Then there is wide receiver Jeff Benson, who ended up in Vegas playing for the Raiders, and he is also going to have a career high in all 3 with 77 catches, 1,100 yards, and 11 touchdowns. The final one of that trio was wide receiver Joey Miller, who was a backup receiver in Detroit. Doesn't get a ton of playing time. This year got 4 catches, 114 yards, and a single touchdown. Fan favorite quarterback Ty Downing, one of the best quarterbacks to probably ever step on the field at Oklahoma. In his 3rd year in the league now, is going to come out with 5,200 yards, 49 touchdowns for a career high, and only 9 interceptions. Probably my favorite player to actually play in the secondary up until this point is free safety Brian Alexander, who ended up in Indianapolis. This will be his 2nd year, and he gets a career high in tackles, and he got his first 2 career interceptions. This guy is a pretty close second to my favorite player in the secondary that we've had so far, and that would be defensive back Alex Red. And this season, he comes away with 4 interceptions and 96 tackles. Now, this guy was an absolute baller for us at Oklahoma. Wide receiver Yude Lane Washington. This will be his 2nd year in the league, and he gets over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. Rich Anderson was a pretty solid receiver for us that I don't feel like I used a whole lot, but he's pretty talented still. So let's see how he did this season in the league. He comes away with 103 catches, 1,400 yards, and 18 touchdowns. He definitely just had a breakout season compared to his rookie year. We're going to save the best player for last out of this draft class, which means running back Chris McKinney. We're not going to look at him until the very end of this, but let's see if Sean Griffin got to do anything as a backup quarterback. He came in and threw for 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. I'm noticing there's a lot of our players on the Chicago Bears in this series, but Ryan Covington was a player that I believe went late 1st round last season, and this year he will have 46 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. Now for the #1 overall pick from last season, defensive end Dwight Rollins. He only comes away with 29 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and only 2 sacks. Now he was injured for a part of the season, and maybe that drastically affected his stats. And I love to see this. In his rookie season, David Jordan leads the Panthers in tackles with 121, only 1 sack. That's not really his specialty. Adam Jackson, who was the number 5 overall pick, apparently has another dislocated ankle. Maybe he has an injury problem here in the NFL, but this year it came away with 53 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 interception. We have one more player before we check to see how Chris McKinney did this season, and that is rookie receiver William Brown. He was drafted to the Tennessee Titans and comes away with 73 catches, a little bit over 1,000 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, the one you have all been waiting for, running back Chris McKinney. Now, we did not see the Colts in the playoff picture, so he clearly could not carry them to a playoff berth, but let's see what his stats look like for his rookie season. 256 attempts, 1,064 yards, and 11 touchdowns. I don't feel like that's bad for a rookie running back. And receiving wise, he had 200 yards and 1 touchdown. Sadly, Ty Downing does not get to the Super Bowl, and I don't believe we have anyone in this game between the 49ers and the Ravens, but I will quickly go double check. I was wrong. We have one player in this game, and that is left guard Josh Higgins. So obviously we will be rooting for Baltimore in this game, as the 49ers have none of our former players on their team. And we do have a Super Bowl champion, as the Ravens win 31-7 over the 49ers. Ty Downing wins, I believe, his 2nd NFL MVP award. Coach of the Year goes to the coach for the Panthers. Offensive Player of the Year goes to Ty Downing. Defensive Player of the Year goes to Myles Murphy. Offensive Rookie of the Year does go to Chris McKinney, and Defensive Rookie of the Year goes to a defensive back in Dallas. Now we are at the NFL Draft, where apparently the New Orleans Saints once again have the number 1 pick. We will simulate a good chunk of the first round to see where our guys go. But the players in this draft for us are running back John Jordan, quarterback Sam Townsend, defensive end Hassan Nugent, defensive back Trey Boland, left guard CJ Clark, tight end Thomas Patterson, left tackle Andrew Harrell, and defensive end Lee Ross. There are a few things I want to go over in this draft class. The first one is going to be quarterback Sam Townsend. He had some pretty solid ratings while at college, but he never really got a lot of playing time, so teams haven't seen a lot of him in game action. So Sam Townsend is projected in rounds 2 to 3 because they know he's really good, but they haven't seen him play a whole lot. Running back John Jordan is projected to be the 2nd running back taken in the class, in between rounds 1 and 2. At tight end, we have Thomas Patterson. Now, I thought about putting him pretty late in the class, but there were a lot of pretty garbage tight ends here. So Thomas Patterson is the number 1 available tight end by far right now. I believe he's an 80 overall. His catching is not that good, just like it was in college. He dropped a lot of passes, but he is a terrific blocking tight end. So let's get the NFL draft underway. And with the number 1 pick, the New Orleans Saints are going to select a outside linebacker in Quincy Tucker out of Utah. What about the Colts with the number 2 pick? Didn't they have the number 2 pick last season as well? They're going to take Chris Turner, a quarterback out of Iowa. So maybe, just maybe, Chris McKinney can have a quarterback again. With the 3rd pick in the draft, Cincinnati is going to take a defensive end out of North Dakota State. With the 4th pick in the draft, the Houston Texans are going to select middle linebacker Johnny Lamb out of Mississippi State. With the 5th pick, the Cleveland Browns are going to take quarterback Archer Hitchens out of Grambling State. So obviously Sam Townsend still available on the board. With the 6th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles will take left tackle Braden Widener out of Notre Dame. Still none of our players have gone yet. The Colts have another 1st round pick, and they will use it on Ricky Kramer out of Clemson. With the number 8 pick, the Raiders are going to take quarterback Graham Carter out of UAB. With the 9th pick, the Chargers are going to select defensive back Bryce Borden out of UCF. And with the 10th pick in the draft, the Buffalo Bills are going to take Sean Johnson, a middle linebacker out of Washington. Now that we are through the top 10 and none of our guys have been selected yet, I will say this was a very quarterback-heavy draft. As you can see here, there are still 4 quarterbacks projected to go in the 1st round. So now with pick 11, the Denver Broncos are going to select quarterback Damon Samuel out of Michigan. With the 12th pick, the Cardinals are going to select Carl Boston out of Georgia, an outside linebacker. With the 13th pick, Tampa Bay takes Brian Walker, a defensive end out of East Carolina. With the 14th pick, the Tennessee Titans take Jimmy Lawrence, an outside linebacker out of Clemson. And now with the 15th pick, the Minnesota Vikings are going to select Thomas Patterson, tight end out of Oklahoma. I'm actually kind of liking this pick with the Vikings. They have a 97 overall quarterback in Larry Mahoney. At wide receiver, they have a 97 and a 94 overall. The only thing that's a little bit concerning is Thomas Patterson will not be the number 1 tight end right now. But now let's go through the rest of the first round and see if any of our guys get taken. With the 16th pick in the draft, the Green Bay Packers are going to select a defensive tackle from Miami. Now the Seahawks with pick number 17 will take defensive end Tavon Dixon. With pick 18, the Falcons are going to take Graham Hardy, a quarterback out of North Dakota State. With pick 19, the Steelers are going to select a right tackle out of Oklahoma. That is not our Oklahoma, though. I know it's a little weird to think about. That's not our guy, though. With pick 20, now Chicago does like taking our players. So let's see, the Bears will end up taking Levi Brown, a left tackle out of USC. With the 21st pick, the Patriots will take Andrew Harrell. That will be our Oklahoma, our starting left tackle. And if I remember his rating right, Andrew Harrell will immediately be the starter in New England. Moving on now, with pick number 22, the New York Giants are going to select Sam, I don't want to try to say your last name, a quarterback out of UTEP. There was another Sam they could have taken at quarterback, but whatever, we'll let him go to somewhere else. With pick 23, the Dolphins will take an outside linebacker out of Georgia. With pick 24, the Cowboys will take a right tackle out of Boise State. With pick 25, the Jets will take a middle linebacker out of Stanford. And then with pick 26, the Lions will take a running back out of Mississippi State. So we still have John Jordan on the board, and now the number one running back is gone. With pick 27, the Kansas City Chiefs will take a defensive back out of Washington. With pick 28, the Carolina Panthers, could they take John Jordan and put him with Ty Downing? No, they won't. They take George Rowe out of Alabama. The LA Rams with pick number 29 are going to take outside linebacker Trent Conway out of USC. With pick number 30, the Jacksonville Jaguars will take Bryson Garrett out of Syracuse, so they pass on John Jordan. Now with pick 31, the 49ers will take Isaiah Gibson, a right tackle out of UCLA. And with the final pick here in the first round, this is the last pick we will actually watch. The Baltimore Ravens are going to select Bobby Smith, a strong safety out of Oregon State. So John Jordan has fallen out of the first round. Running back John Jordan ended up going in the second round at pick 9 to the Los Angeles Chargers, and just a couple picks later, we have CJ Clark going to the Denver Broncos. The next player we had drafted was defensive end Hassan Nugent, who is heading to the New York Jets at pick 25 in the second round. Lamar Jackson has a new backup quarterback in Baltimore, as Sam Townsend was taken at the end of the second round. I didn't even notice that 2 picks before Sam Townsend, though, defensive back Trey Boland was taken by Jacksonville. And our final player taken in this draft is defensive end Lee Ross, taken in the middle of the 6th round to Seattle. But following that will wrap up the Madden 23 part of this video, so now I will send you back over to the team preview for Season 11. And now that all of that is taken care of, let's go ahead and jump into the actual team preview part of this video. The first thing we're going to do is go over all of the players that I have decided to redshirt for this season, and the first one is quarterback Mark Harwell. Over at running back, we have decided to redshirt Lorenzo Keller. We will be using true freshman running back Brandon Pendleton, and I will get to that here in just a minute. We will be redshirting 2 of the freshmen for this season at receiver, and that would be Mike Tucker and wide receiver Calvin Galloway. Along the offensive line, we're going to redshirt Yudlane Hall at left tackle. We're going to redshirt Trenigan at left guard. At center, we're going to redshirt Brad Johnson. No redshirt at right guard, and a right tackle redshirt will be Matt Smith. On defense, we have right end Reggie Wilson that will be redshirted, and at defensive tackle, we have true freshman Lynn Moore that will be redshirted. The final player that will be redshirted this season will be defensive back Calvin Rogers. We will get to the depth chart here in just a minute, but first I want to go over the season schedule. We start in week 1 by going to Tuscaloosa and taking on Alabama. Then we have a bye week in week 2. Then we get to take on Ole Miss at home, Arkansas at home. Then we travel to Tennessee. Then the Red River Showdown against Texas. Then we will go to Notre Dame, who is currently number 3. Then we have a home game against Nebraska, another bye week, and then we travel to Mississippi State, to Texas A&M, and to Missouri. Then we finally have a home game against LSU, another bye week, and then we will close out the regular season in Norman against Oklahoma State. There will not be any competition for starting quarterback. Doug Brooks came in last year as a true freshman, threw 45 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He played pretty well. At running back, I did have a small decision to make. I could have gone with Corey Mays. He was our backup running back last year. He played pretty well in what limited time he got, but I want to go with true freshman Brandon Pendleton, mainly because of that 96 speed. The only thing that really concerns me about him is, if I remember correctly, his carrying rating is not that high, so if he starts fumbling the ball a lot, we may look at the other running backs a little bit more. I think our wide receiver room this year got a lot better. John Carrington's up to an 88 overall, Seth Phillips on the other outside spots an 88 overall, and then we will have John Mangum in the slot and Robert Weber backing them up at 96 speed. Our new tight end will be Sammy Whitaker. He comes in as an 87 overall, a true junior. He is replacing Thomas Patterson, and our backup will be Martin Gillum, a true freshman we brought in. At left tackle, we will be using a true freshman with Gerald Harvey. He comes in as an 81 overall. We will see how he does. At left guard, we will be using right guard Derek Suggs, who is an 83. At center, we will have 84 overall Travis Clark. At right guard, an 85 in Eric Weber, and at right tackle, an 87 in Joey Rutledge. Now for the defensive line, where I definitely had a few decisions to make. Last year, a guy like Paul Manning played really well. Well, Hunter Cade got a lot better in the offseason, up to a 93 overall. His block shedding, I believe, increased by a lot, and let's see what that rating is now. It is up to a 97. So Hunter Cade will be our starting left end. Our starting right end will be Dwayne McDaniel. Paul Manning will back him up. And then at defensive tackle, we have J.R. Pearson and Chris Rowland, backed up by Jeremy Williams. Dwayne McDaniel will play 4-string DT. Hopefully you won't have to play too much. And then we have Kevin Dickens. The linebackers are also a pretty solid point on this defense. Ian Wilson, a second-year player, as an 86 overall. At middle linebacker, we will have Nate Thompson, officially a middle linebacker now, with 91 overall. And at right outside linebacker, we will have Brian Bass at an 88 overall, backed up by Adam Manson. And as good as that front seven is, the secondary might be the best part of this defense. Jeff Cox is a 97 overall, Elton Butler is a 92, Ben Rivers is an 88, and Shane Jackson is an 88. So most of the time at corner, we won't have anyone lower than an 88 overall on the field. At free safety, we have 95 overall Dwayne Jones returning from injury. And at strong safety, we will have 89 overall Kyle Olson, backed up by Jason Mitchell. Not much of a shock here. Our kicker will be Brian Wood, and our punter will be Dan Reed, a true freshman that we just brought in. I really didn't know what to do with kick and punt returner this season. Last season I used Adam West, but he fumbled the ball a little too much for my liking. So this season we're going to go with Robert Weber as our kick and our punt returner. Now we have preseason all-conference awards. So let's go into this and see who made this team. Obviously we have quarterback Doug Brooks. We have wide receiver John Mangum. Apparently none of our offensive line is going to make it. We do get Paul Manning, even though he will not start this season. Dwayne McDaniel, J.R. Pearson, Chris Rowland, Nate Thompson, Brian Bass, and Jeff Cox, Elton Butler, and Kyle Olson. So surprisingly, Dwayne Jones doesn't make it. I know he was injured most of last season though. But now over to the second team, we do have Seth Phillips at wide receiver, Joey Rutledge at right tackle. None of our other offensive line has made it here, and I'm not seeing anyone else on our defense, but we do have kicker Brian Wood. Now for just the regular preseason All-Americans. Doug Brooks has made it, John Mangum has made it. Obviously, we won't have anyone on the offensive line. Paul Manning does make it. Dwayne McDaniel doesn't here though. J.R. Pearson is here. No Chris Rowland, but Nate Thompson has made it. Brian Bass, Jeff Cox, and Kyle Olson has made it here as well. Not seeing anyone on the second team so far, so none of our offense has made it here. At defense, we do have Dwayne McDaniel getting on this list, and I believe that's going to be the only one. The favorite for the Heisman Trophy going into this season is quarterback Doug Brooks, though, so maybe we get back on track. We won 5 Heisman Trophies in a row. Last season, we did not win it. I believe it went to this running back at Northern Illinois. You will most likely notice throughout this season, I changed a few players' numbers in the offseason. Not really that big of a change, though, so I'm not going to go over it. I still know all of their names, and you guys will just slowly see all of those most likely. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and in the next episode, we will take on Alabama in Week 1.